All right, folks, I'm at Raven Armoury with Snaga, as you can see. And I'm joined here by the owner, Simon Fearnhamm.
Hi.
Thank you for having me. It's
welcome.
great to meet in person and talk about weapons and really art. How long have you been doing this?
Since I left school. So, about 38 years I think I've been making. And prior to that, I dabbled about. I made martial art weapons when I was a kid, as you do.
What got you into it originally?
I guess it was more from the fantasy fiction, that kind of thing. I read a lot as a kid, and I was into the concept of the weapons I was reading about, and the arms and armour side of things, and I just didn't find anything was out there. You know, I did look, and there wasn't anything that I could find available to buy that was real. So I ended up making my own.
That's also what I find particularly interesting about your work, that it's often directly based on certain novels. And David Gemmell is one of my favorite authors, as I've mentioned in another video. And Snaga is also, in particular, one of those really iconic weapons. Like, as soon as you see it, and in fact, it always irks me when I see those other covers where someone else did the work and didn't originally have anything to do with it. They just put it on some prints of it, and you can just see that it doesn't really have anything to do with Snaga the way it's described. But on the other covers, you always see this characteristic butterfly shape. So depending on how you make it, it can be quite hefty. This is, I'm guessing, probably about 10 kilos.
18 pounds.
Probably,
yeah, that's about the heaviest version that we've made.
What's the lightest version you made?
About 12, 14 pound for that size.
So it's still pretty hefty for an axe of this size in particular, but much more doable. This one here, I mean, you can hold it obviously, but if you actually hold it outward, it becomes quite clunky. So Druss obviously is a big, strong guy and all that, but I don't think he could handle this effectively. Like, in the sense that you can definitely destroy something with it, you can swing it, but it's not really the kind of combat agility that you would normally need.
Not for hours on end.
Exactly. So we got the runes here as well. That is quite a mean spike right here at the end.
Yeah, it's about half-inch thick.
Half-inch. Mm. And I like that it's not just a simple straight handle. There's a lot of detail here, and it widens and narrows, and there's a lot more to it. The leather wrap here is nice and tight as well. It's just a beautiful piece overall. And here's the adorable mini version. To be honest, if I was forced to fight with either this or that, I think I'll pick this. You could do a little more with it. I mean,
You could try that.
Obviously, that one is devastating. You wouldn't want it to even just dropped on you. But I feel like maybe twice the size of this. That would actually be fairly usable, single-handed.
Yeah, I'm doing a 3/4 size version of that full size, and I think that will fill up.
That should be good, yeah. I think so too. I like that you really make this the exact same way as the full-size one, because sometimes people, when they make a smaller version of something, they skip some of the details.
Yeah.
Just simplify it a little bit. Do you sell more of the small ones or more?
No, more of the big ones.
More of the big ones?
Yeah.
It's the same quality work. As said, it preserves all the details, and it's a little bit easier to move around. And if you just want it on the wall, that's great. I like that.
So which ones do you prefer, the big or the small?
I'm going for the ones we haven't made yet, the 3/4 size. I think that will feel exceptional.
So, can you tell me something about this dagger here?
We call it an Evo dagger because it's basically the same shape as the tip of our Evolution scimitar. And we make them as part of a set, so that we do the sword, short sword and dagger. And the dagger evolved from the sword. So, you know, I wanted to make something that was a matching piece. Nice, lightweight, elegant, beautiful.
Coming close, I love the grind here. I like how defined this line here is. A hollow grind on the one side and...
Both sides got a slight hollow. This has got a slight hollow.
Slight hollow, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, it looked flat from here, but it is actually hollow ground as well. The detail here, I quite like. On the guard there. Beautiful dark red. Right, this as well. And that's the kind of thing that you would often see on museum pieces. You know, like twisted pommels and things like that. Particularly, look at just how tiny, how small the pattern is. Like very few people take the time and precision needed to make that. So I very much appreciate that.
Swords of Night and Day or one of the scimitars?
I feel like we should save the Swords of Night and Day for last because that's kind of the highlight. I mean, we'll start with one highlight, Snaga, and then end with the other highlight. Okay, so this scimitar evolved from the dagger you just saw. And immediately when I pick it up, it's so light and nimble. Like you just need a little, tightening of the fingers, a little bit of a wrist flick, and you can already cut quite well with that. And it has some details that I don't normally see. Like, for example, if you come in here, the grind right there. Does it focus?
No, it does. We always need a hand behind it.
Yeah. So usually that's just flat. So you can see the way it widens here, and then the edge grind on the false edge there makes it taper there. So you've got just this little thickened area there, which just adds a lot of flavor to it. That as well, that raised area there. I like that a lot. I don't think I've seen it before that the fuller is kind of angled there on the sides. The detail on the guard. Antique bronze, I'm guessing?
It's a darkened bronze finish.
I like how dark it is. And here, again, it's a nice detail on the peen block, that there's two separate pieces, actually. And that seems nice and comfortable, too, here. That really conforms to the finger at the bottom there. I mean, it really feels like a single-handed one, but you can definitely use the other hand as well, so you can use it sort of as a hand and a half, really. Very nice. This as well, like on the leather here, this riser. I like this one a lot. It's extremely light, it's gorgeous, just the overall shape and everything.
We called it an evolution because it's the evolution of 20-something years of making scimitars. It was just a very aesthetically pleasing design. Just making something practical but beautiful. Yeah. That's the idea behind it.
That's exactly what you did. That's the same blade, right?
Same style.
Different hilt?
Yeah, same style, slightly different. They're all hand ground, so this one's a bit heavier.
Yeah, because you have the skulls here. There's just a little bit more on the guard and pommel. But it does show that you can do that. These is very classic fantasy elements. You have skulls and heads and just more sculpted, three-dimensional guards and pommel. You have a lot more mass here in the hilt, which pulls everything back a little bit. So the other one would cut better. I do like the way the skulls are positioned here, and like the one in the center and the other two look off to the side, and it's even got the spine there.
That's another chiming.
I'm going to have to try to get that on the microphone.
An early 1990s sword, which we've fully refurbished. So,
Let's see, can I get that?
it's got a nice chime.
It's a beautiful ring. Oh, yeah. Wow, this is extremely light.
Yeah.
And that is definitely a hand and a half sword. This is quite easy to use in one hand, but yeah, you could use the other hand for support. I kind of want to put the finger up here, just give the other hand more space. But yeah, that works quite well. That adds a lot to it, that diamond cross section. And riser there, in fact the second one at the bottom. There's something very elegant about the shape overall, with how narrow it is, and I really like this detail here. That just, you don't have to, but it adds a lot of flavor to it. Those grind lines there, the mini fullers or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, we call them flutes, just around the ricasso area at the start of the blade.
Yeah, 1.4 kilos. So
1.4?
3 pounds.
Wow, it feels extremely light.
Good heft, well balanced.
Even in one hand, I would not have guessed.
I think this is the oldest sword I've got in here. This was made in, I think, 1989.
Wow.
The cabinet was not really built for swords this size.
Yeah.
So this is going to be, what I would consider to be a very crude blade. But this is like the precursor for all of these leaf blade designs. This was the beginning. And, I'd look at it and I'd think, yeah, for when it was made and what we were making it with, it's not bad. But it doesn't have the same feel in terms of, you feel that it doesn't feel, that the heft is not the same. Obviously, it's a massive sword.
I see what you mean. Mm-hmm. Yeah, still usable, but yeah, it's.
I was learning the ropes.
Of course.
Back then, I was 21 years old when I made that.
It's in really good condition for the age. It's old sword. Yeah, I think a lot of the extra weight is probably coming from the guard and the pommel, of course, in particular, being so large. But that's just a lot of fantasy swords have really big pommels because, of course, from an artistic point of view, you want to give them a lot of 3D shape and you want to express something. Whereas a lot of functional soldier swords is just you design something that works. It doesn't need to look pretty. Although in the Renaissance, even then, sometimes they gave soldiers some remarkably complex swords. So there's that. Is there any particular sword you think back to because of how much of a headache it gave you?
Quite a few.
Figure.
We've done some very, very elaborate swords that have gone into the Middle East, and some of them took months to make, a lot of detail. So yeah, labours of love, but yeah.
What's usually the most challenging part?
Making everything a really good fit. It's the blades we've been doing a long time, and we can do some very complicated blades. Everything's done by hand, but we're I think just making everything fit and work.
There's so much that goes into it. But I guess as you get better, you also notice it less, right? Because you've done it so much and it becomes automated.
Yeah,
right?
It's almost like muscle memory as you're going with doing stuff. So and I think aesthetically, you can have an eye for it. And sometimes, as you say, some designs we see it on some of the items we get asked to make, where it might not quite flow quite right. We'll give advice and we'll try and encourage people to have something that aesthetically, a little bit of adjustment could make that look that much nicer. It doesn't always work. Sometimes we have to make things that aren't quite so attractive, but
that's what the customer wants.
If that's what the customer wants, then that's what we do.
If you were to give people advice on how to design something they want to have made, is there anything you would tell them in particular?
Well, I'd suggest looking at some original or some artwork and seeing what they think works for them. Because again, we do pieces from artwork, modern contemporary pieces from artwork. Most of the fantasy designs are our own, but some are worked from other people's ideas. When we take things from books, it's an interesting process when we're taking something from a book, because the author's not necessarily going to describe everything that's involved in that. But with the Swords of Night and Day, that worked really well. That definitely did. They've come out nicely.
I was pointing out just earlier with Snaga, it definitely depends on how thick you make it, because it's not specified. Also, how you go about figuring out the length, right?
As long as a man's arm.
Yeah.
How tall's the man you're talking about at that point in time?
Right.
And some people do have long arms. I think he was 6 foot, but I can't remember if there was actually a specification. I seem to recall him being 6 foot.
I'd like to show that, because I don't think the camera picks it up at this distance, the color on the guard.
So yeah, this one's got bronze fittings. Yeah, the patina on that's beautiful.
The finish on here, not only is it a beautiful green, but it's speckled. It almost looks like marble at a certain angle.
There we go. Yeah.
There. How did you make the finish on that one?
We do a lot of bronze sculpture, so it's just one of the verdigris patina that we do. So we darken it and then we throw verdigris over the top. And we do this in some of our skulls and things that we make in bronze. So again, it's something we don't often do on swords. So this is one of the first swords this size, this kind, that we've done with that verdigris patina. It still feels nice, even though it's quite heavy. It still feels quite wieldy.
I really like the finish on that one. That came out beautifully. Such a nice dark green, and the pattern is quite something. So what's the story behind this one here?
That one is one from the Royal Armoury's collection. It was a sword we did copies of. Originally we did copies that went in the Royal Armoury shop when they were back down at the Tower of London. And that one's had a lot of aging. And this is one that's come back to us to resell for the customer. And the blade, you can see, it's rotted quite extensively. So it's had a lot of heavy aging.
And this one's also aged, just not as much.
A light antiquing on this one. And this one was based on the A459 in the Wallace collection. And that sword was Ewart Oakeshott's favourite sword. So the first one I ever made was commissioned by Ewart Oakeshott. And the original has a beautiful hologram blade. Oh, it feels so nice. That does. It really does feel good.
Oh, yeah.
It's a really nice feeling medieval sword.
Yes.
And I actually got to handle the original, so that was nice.
Yeah. It's light, and you can quickly move it around, but you can feel it has a good amount of mass for the cut. So this would be very unpleasant to be hit with. Not that any sword is pleasant, but you know what I mean. Like, you can just feel it wants to cut. And probably with that blade profile, you can probably cut fairly high up too. You know, with some swords, when they taper a lot, you have to cut lower down, but this here, yeah, no problem. Here, let's get a look at the patina.
Just a leaf blade short sword. It's I mean, I've been doing leaf blades since the end of the 1980s, I guess. It's quite a long time. And the designs evolve over the time, but each one is an individual piece. So there's not another one out there in the world that's exactly the same as this one made by us.
Oh yeah, I like that it's just a little steeper here where the leaf blade widens. Almost to where there's a corner, but it is round. I like that it's kind of in between. What do you like about leaf blades? Is it just aesthetics overall?
Aesthetics, yeah. And it's hard to say what is a favourite, because again, I do like the way this one comes out, rather than just one big curve into another curve where you've got that slight angle, just change of direction, and that works. It flows nicely.
It really does, yeah. And again, the grind here, it's quite a nice touch. I like that a lot. And that's a quick one. Very quick. I think a Roman soldier might give you an odd look if you handed this to him, but then he'd be like, okay, I can work with this.
Yep. It's not far off a gladius.
Yeah, it is surprisingly similar, considering that there is a metal pommel, which they wouldn't have had, and a guard, but it kind of feels like that still. A little bit different, but it's reminiscent. This killage here, how did that come about?
The blade was copied after one in the Topkapi Museum, and we were commissioned to make a blade for someone, and we ended up making it a little bit too light, so we made him another blade that was a little heavier. I love the weight of it. It feels, and it chimes like a bell, that one, but it's
really exactly like a bell, yes. Yeah, I do like the weight on that, because it still has enough blade presence that you can tell that it would cut well, but it moves well too.
You might have to move the hand along.
Yeah, probably. Gonna lose focus otherwise.
1,400 silver pins, I think.
1,400 silver pins. Wow. Yeah, I can see that. That must have taken forever.
The ivory micarta that we're using on the swords of night and day. We actually invented part of the design of the back of the scabbard because we copied original Hijazi daggers when we were given this commission. But if you ever see a Hijazi dagger, you'll just see it's got split pins that go through and bend over. There's a little butterfly that we made in silver to tidy it up because it's just not there on the originals. They just look messy. So we added that little tiny washer for the pins to bend around.
It's a very nice touch.
But you won't find it on any original. There'll be thousands of originals out there, but you won't find that.
That's the biggest sword here right now. I don't think that'll fit in the frame. Or maybe just about. I can't quite see where the tip is, but I think it sort of fits in the frame.
He said right now, but did you ever have a bigger one than that?
Not as a katana. This is the largest katana that we've made, and it was made to commission for someone who was specific about all the details. We've made some other bigger swords. I did a 7-foot claymore for someone once, and that that was the largest that we've ever made.
But it's not heavy at all. This is perfectly usable. No problem at all. You've got plenty of control with the long handle, but even if you choke up, or down in fact, it's fine. That's Subat. It's a very different take on it. That it's, basically beveled almost to an edge. Pretty much exactly your height.
It is 5'4".
Yep, exactly.
So this is our very first generation prototype set of the Swords of Night and Day. When we were sketching out the idea and how it would work, making sure we could develop the lock so that you press the ruby stud to release the Sword of Night, press the emerald stud to release the Sword of Day, and we were developing that lock mechanism to make it all work and make sure that they were drawable. So the next version we made had hanging rings, so you could wear it on the back. That's the Sword of Day.
You mentioned earlier that you have to be mindful of how you place the mechanism because it needs to...
It's a complicated lock mechanism, yeah.
Because you have to fit the tang in there too. The tang needs to be wide enough.
It has to wrap around the tang, so it's hidden inside the habaki. The habaki houses the lock, and it took a long time to work that out. Worked with a very clever individual who helped me. He did all the work designing the lock. I'm not going to take credit for it. And it was to do where you could press one button and have both teeth move in at the same time. That was a little bit of cantilevering inside, and this is, like I say, it's a sketch, so your close-ups, in my eyes, you're looking at just my line drawing. You want to see the painting when we've made them. That will be a bit further down the line. But yeah, as a sketch to come up with the idea and the design, make it work, yeah, I'm really pleased with them.
I love that you even consider that a prototype because that's much better work than so many finished swords that I've seen and handled, so that's absolutely gorgeous. And also the detail in the handle here. The grind as well. Just nice and deep here. Super sharp lines, and there as well. I like the shape here on the spine. I love what you did with the runes. Can you tell people again what you told me earlier?
Yeah, when we'd finished designing the swords when David Gemmell passed away, and I didn't get to work with him on what he would have wanted engraved on them, and they're described in the books as having eldritch or engravings running up the blades, but no idea of what it would have said. So we ended up deciding to put every book that David had written, 32 titles at that time that had been published. We transcribed them into Old Norse runes, but we didn't translate them, so that every rune is a character representing a letter, so that it's got 8 titles in each fuller, 16 titles on each sword. And so they're a dedication to David Gemmell and his books, because I think without reading Legend and without that book, I couldn't say that I'd be a swordsmith. You know, it's it was definitely that kind of fantasy fiction that got me into this.
Yeah, it was very influential. What's the inlay here?
Gold.
That is actual gold.
So that one's got silver inlay and gold on the sword of day, silver on the sword of night. And a ruby on that one. So we went again going with the gold idea. We made the teeth on that one in bronze to give that golden colour, and the teeth of this one is steel. And that one was our first prototype. It's a little heavier than the sword of day.
Oh yeah.
And that's the weight we're going for. We lightened it off. We're working out how we were doing it at the time.
Makes sense. Yeah. This is still usable and everything, but this feels better. I agree. Yeah. This is really where it's at. That is absolutely. That would be very effective.
Having them in your hand as a pair as well, it's a kind of empowering feeling with that.
It really is, yeah. It's beautiful, like the meaning of the runes, that every book is on there, and it's just, that is one of my favorite things ever. Such nice work, and again, very iconic. You know, if you're a fan of David Gemmell, that's kind of the holy grail of collectibles in my book. Should I say book? Anyway, I like the different detail in each one. It's not immediately apparent when you look at them from a distance, other than the color of the buttons, but then you look at it like, oh yeah, hang on. And very comfortable handles too. And of course, this scabbard.
It was complicated to work out a scabbard that would hold 2 swords, and that's why it flows. There's a bit of an S going through it. And again, this is our first sketch idea. And some of them that we're making are going to be in ebony, and some will be leather-bound ash, and some of them will be in black micarta. We're using ivory micarta on the handles. So I will be making a few with mammoth ivory. This one, when we finish the production version, we're going to gold inlay the throat, so that you know that's the sword of day.
Right. Oh, I like the way it fits too. It's so smooth. Yeah. I can't convey that on camera, but just, sometimes when you have mechanisms like that on a sword cane, for example, like you slide in, there's a bit of a grind, and there's this aggressive snap that's just gently slides in, and it's just this slight click. It's very nice. Thank you so much, Simon, for taking the time to show me everything, tell us something about it. I know it's kind of a cliche question, but what's your favorite thing about doing this?
This is going to be around in thousands and thousands of years' time. Whatever people are making, very few things are going to survive. You know, most of the stuff around us is thrown away within weeks or months or years. Some stuff, well-made furniture, whatever, could be surviving hundreds of years. But when it comes to swords, knives, well-made swords and knives, we know that these survive for thousands of years. It's quite an astonishing legacy to leave. You know, I've got all 3 of my sons working with me on that. Max is in there. He's doing almost all of our blades. You know, it's phenomenal work. And as another thing, it's being able to hand this down to the boys has been brilliant.
It's something you can be much more proud of, as opposed to a lot of the mass-produced stuff. Like the fact that every piece is unique, and there's just so much more quality in the craftsmanship in and of itself. It's quite spectacular, really. I very much enjoyed that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed it too. Thanks for watching.